Beneath glittering chandeliers and whispered scandals, a heart once overlooked begins to awaken. A man who believed he held every power in his hands now feels the ground shift as a single dance threatens everything he thought he controlled. Jealousy coils through the air like smoke, revealing a truth he tried to ignore. Nothing burns fiercer than desire denied. And in the center of it all, a woman he once dismissed steps into her own radiance, drawing every gaze, including his. Before this story sweeps you away, tell me, where are you listening from? And what do you love most about period romances? In the glittering haze of a New York ballroom, under chandeliers that dripped like molten gold, Olivia Harrington stood frozen, her heart shattering like fine crystal on marble. The year was 1887, and the Gilded Age pulsed with opulent secrets, fortunes built on steel and smoke, where the elite danced on the graves of the forgotten. Olivia, with her raven hair pinned in elegant coils and her gown of deep emerald silk hugging her slender frame, had believed in the fairy tale. Married at 19 to Ethan Blackwell, a rising railroad magnate whose sharp blue eyes and broad shoulders had once made her world spin, she thought their love was unbreakable. But tonight, as the orchestra swelled with a waltz from Vienna, Ethan's gaze lingered not on her, but on the woman across the room. Clara Voss, the infamous widow with porcelain skin and a laugh like tinkling bells, draped in scarlet velvet that whispered of forbidden desires. Whispers slithered through the crowd like serpents. "Blackwell's taken a fancy to her," they said. "The wife? Poor thing, she'll be cast aside like yesterday's fashion." Olivia's gloved hand trembled on her fan. She had given Ethan everything, her youth, her family's fading name, the quiet dreams of a home beyond the city's clamor. Yet here he was, striding toward Clara, his tailored tuxedo coat straining against his athletic build, a predator in a sea of peacocks. Their eyes met across the floor, and in that instant, Olivia saw it. The choice. He chose her, his mistress, not with words, but with the way his hand brushed Clara's waist, the way he leaned in, inhaling her perfume as if it were oxygen. The room spun. Laughter echoed, mocking her. Olivia pressed a hand to her corseted waist, fighting the sob clawing up her throat. How had it come to this? Their marriage, once a whirlwind of stolen kisses in Central Park and promises whispered by gaslight, now crumbled under the weight of ambition and temptation. Ethan had risen from a modest clerk to a titan, his empire sprawling from Chicago to the Atlantic, but success had carved hollows in his soul. Late nights at the club, excuses about deals in shadowed boardrooms, lies she had swallowed until they poisoned her. As Ethan led Clara to the dance floor, their bodies moving in perfect, scandalous sync, Olivia slipped toward the terrace doors. The cool night air hit her like a slap. The distant rumble of horse-drawn carriages, a grim reminder of the world beyond this gilded cage. She leaned against the stone balustrade, tears blurring the skyline of spires and smokestacks. "Why?" she whispered to the stars, her voice breaking. In her pocket, a crumpled letter burned, a note from her maid, detailing Ethan's rendezvous at the plaza, his gifts to Clara that could have fed a tenement for a year. But fate, that cruel puppeteer, had more in store. Back inside, the music shifted to a lively polka, and Olivia, steeling herself, re-entered the fray. She wouldn't fade into whispers. No, she would dance. Spotting Daniel Whitaker, a kind-eyed architect with tousled brown hair and a reputation for quiet integrity, she extended her hand. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, her voice steady despite the storm within, "might I have this dance?" He bowed, surprised but charmed. "Mrs. Blackwell, the honor is mine." As they twirled, Olivia felt eyes upon her, sharp, jealous, Ethan's. From the corner of her vision, she saw him break from Clara, his jaw clenching, fists balling at his sides. Rage flickered in those blue eyes. A fire she hadn't seen since their wedding night. He burned. Not with love, perhaps, but with possession. The man who had chosen his mistress now watched his wife in another's arms, and the ballroom held its breath. What secrets would unravel from this spark? Would Olivia reclaim her fire, or would Ethan's fury drag them all into the abyss? The night was young, and the Gilded Age demanded its toll. If this tale of passion and betrayal has you hooked, hit that subscribe button now to dive deeper into these epic stories from America's golden era. And drop a comment below. Tell me what city and country you're watching from. Your thoughts keep the drama alive. The morning after the ball dawned grey and heavy over Manhattan, the kind of light that seeped through lace curtains like regret. Olivia Blackwell rose from her four-poster bed in the brownstone on Fifth Avenue, the silk sheets whispering against her skin as she sat up. At 24, she still carried the grace of her debutante days, her dark hair tumbling in loose waves down her back, framing a face pale from a sleepless night. She slipped into a morning gown of soft muslin, its high neckline modest and high-waisted, the fabric pale blue like faded forget-me-nots. No corset yet, just the gentle pressure of reality settling in. Downstairs, the house hummed with the quiet efficiency of servants. The Harrington family home, now Blackwell's by marriage, stood as a monument to old money clinging to new fortunes. Crystal decanters gleamed on mahogany sideboards. Portraits of stern ancestors watched from oiled frames. Olivia's mother, Eliza Harrington, a widow of 50 with silver-streaked hair piled in a neat chignon and a perpetual air of faded elegance, presided over breakfast in the dining room. Eliza's black bombazine dress, severe and unadorned, spoke of losses long mourned, her husband gone to consumption, her daughter now adrift in a marriage of steel tracks and shadowed glances. "Morning, dear," Eliza said, her voice crisp as she poured tea from a silver pot. Steam curled upward, carrying the scent of Darjeeling. "You look weary. That ball must have been taxing." Olivia forced a smile, settling into her chair. The table was set with fine china, poached eggs and toast arranged just so. Etiquette demanded poise, even in private. It was lively, Mother. The Vanderbilts outdid themselves with the orchestra. Eliza's eyes narrowed slightly, her fork pausing mid-air. She had heard the whispers by dawn. Servants' gossip travelled faster than telegraph wires. "Lively indeed. I saw Mr. Blackwell with that Voss woman. Clara, isn't it? The widow from the opera set. Bold of her to wear scarlet in mixed company." Olivia's hand tightened on her cup. The porcelain warmed her palm, but inside a chill spread. Ethan had not come to their bedchamber last night. He'd claimed a late meeting at the club, his cologne, sandalwood and tobacco, lingering like an accusation. She remembered their early days, walks along the Hudson, his hand firm on hers, promising a life beyond the Harringtons' dwindling estates. Ethan, at 30, had been a force then, tall, with a jaw like chiseled granite and eyes that held the promise of endless horizons. Now his railroad empire swallowed him whole, boardrooms and bribes turning ambition to obsession. "He dances where he pleases," Olivia replied softly, buttering her toast. "As do I." Eliza set down her napkin, her lace cuffs rustling. "Mind your step, Olivia. Society watches. The Blackwells are new blood, but you're Harrington by birth. We don't court scandal." The door to the dining room swung open, and in strode Ethan, his boots polished to a shine, vest crisp under his morning coat. He nodded curtly, taking his seat at the head. "Ladies." His voice was deep, edged with fatigue or guilt. He poured coffee black, no cream, and attacked his eggs with vigor. "Good morning, husband," Olivia said, her tone even. She studied him, the faint stubble shadowing his chin, the way his broad shoulders filled the chair. Last night's rage in his eyes haunted her, not love, but ownership. It stirred something defiant in her chest. Ethan glanced up, his blue gaze meeting hers for a beat too long. The ball was a success. Secured a deal with the Pennsylvania line. We'll expand west by spring. Eliza beamed faintly. Splendid. Olivia, you must host a dinner soon. Cement alliances. As they ate, the conversation flowed in polite currents. Talk of the latest Astor Gala, the tariff debates in Congress, the crush of immigrants flooding Ellis Island. But beneath it, tension simmered. Olivia felt it in Ethan's averted eyes, in the way he drummed fingers on the tablecloth. She recalled their wedding 5 years prior, St. Patrick's Cathedral, her gown of ivory satin and Alençon lace, vows exchanged under stained glass. He'd been tender then, whispering of children and quiet estates upstate. Now, Clara Voss loomed like a spectre, rumoured to have ensnared a senator before widowhood, her salons buzzing with artists and agitators. After breakfast, Olivia retreated to the parlour, a sunlit room with velvet settees and a grand piano she rarely played. She sat by the window, watching carriages clatter past, ladies in bustled skirts and feathered hats promenading under parasols. The Gilded Age glittered outside, mansions rising like fortresses, newsboys hawking headlines of strikes and tycoons. But for women like her, the world was a gilded cage, marriages arranged for status, reputations fragile as eggshell. A knock at the door. Her maid, young Bridget with freckles and an Irish lilt, entered bearing a silver tray. "Ma'am, a letter for you, from Mr. Whittaker." Olivia's pulse quickened. Daniel Whittaker, the architect she'd danced with, tall and lean with warm brown eyes and a scholar's dishevelled charm, he'd spoken of building bridges that united, not divided. Their waltz had been innocent, a shield against the stairs. She broke the wax seal, unfolding the crisp stationery. "Dear Mrs. Blackwell," it read. "Last night's dance lingers in my thoughts. Might I call tomorrow? I have sketches of a park design that could transform the city. Green spaces for all, not just the elite. Your insights would honour me. Sincerely, Daniel." A flush warmed her cheeks. Hope flickered, small but real. Perhaps conversation beyond ballrooms, beyond Ethan's empire. But as she folded the letter, footsteps approached. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Who writes to you so early?" Olivia tucked the note away. "An acquaintance. Nothing of note." He stepped closer, the air thickening. "Acquaintances like Whittaker? I saw you with him. Careless, Olivia. Tongues wag." She met his stare, chin lifting. "As careless as your steps with Mrs. Voss." Silence stretched, taut as a bowstring. Ethan's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned and left, the door clicking shut like a lock. That afternoon, as Olivia attended a ladies' sewing circle at the Presbyterian church, stitching linens for the poor, while gossip swirled like thread, a whisper reached her from Mrs. Langford, a matron with rouged cheeks and a penchant for scandal. "Heard Blackwell's buying up shares in Voss's late husband's mines. Quite the investment. Or is it something more personal?" Olivia's needle pricked her finger, a bead of blood blooming on the cloth. The room's chatter faded, leaving only the echo of that whisper. By evening, as gas lamps flickered to life outside, a carriage pulled up unannounced. Bridget rushed in. "Ma'am, Mrs. Voss is here, says it's urgent." Olivia's heart plummeted. What game was this? The widow, bold as brass, stepping into her home. As Clara entered the parlour in a daring tea-gown of crimson taffeta, her golden curls pinned with pearls, she smiled like a cat with cream. "Mrs. Blackwell, we must talk. Your husband. He's made promises." The words hung, a serpent's hiss. Olivia stood, the room closing in. What fresh betrayal awaited? Clara Voss swept into the parlour like a storm cloud dressed in silk, her crimson taffeta gown rustling with each calculated step. The fabric clung to her curves, its low neckline edged in black lace, a widow's mourning-turned weapon. At 28, she carried the poise of a woman who had buried one fortune and eyed another. Her golden curls framed a face sharp as a debutante's envy, green eyes gleaming with false sympathy. Olivia rose from her settee, the muslin of her afternoon dress suddenly feeling too plain, too vulnerable. "Mrs. Voss," Olivia said, her voice steady as she gestured to a chair, "to what do I owe this visit?" Clara settled gracefully, removing her gloves with deliberate slowness. The fire in the grate crackled, casting shadows that danced like accusations. Straight to the point. "I admire that. Your husband, Ethan, sent me, or rather, his actions did." Olivia's pulse thundered in her ears. She sat opposite, hands folded in her lap to hide their tremble. Bridget hovered at the door, eyes wide. Before slipping away to fetch tea, the room smelled of beeswax polish and the faint jasmine of Clara's perfume, intoxicating, invasive. "Sent you?" Olivia echoed. "For what purpose? To gloat?" Clara's laugh was light, like shattering glass. "Gloat? No, my dear. To warn. Ethan and we've grown close. Closer than society whispers. He speaks of leaving the railroads behind. Of a life unburdened by duty, with me." The words landed like blows. Olivia's mind reeled back to their wedding vows, Ethan's hand warm in hers under the cathedral's vaulted ceiling. 5 years of shared suppers by candlelight, his laughter echoing through this very house. Now this intruder claimed it all. "You're lying," Olivia whispered, though doubt gnawed at her. The letter from Bridget, the late nights, the rage in his eyes last night, it all aligned too neatly. Clara leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. "Am I? Ask him about the sapphire necklace, the one he bought in Paris last autumn. Not for you, surely. You prefer emeralds." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "Or the papers he's signing. My late husband's mining interests, Ethan's folding them into his empire. For us, a future." Olivia's breath caught. The whisper at the sewing circle echoed. Shares in the mines. Personal investment indeed. She stood abruptly, crossing to the window. Outside, the afternoon sun gilded the avenue, ladies strolling with parasols like colourful birds in a cage. Her reflection stared back, pale, resolute. "Get out," she said finally, turning. "You've said your piece, now leave my home." Clara rose, unfazed, slipping her gloves back on. "Think carefully, Mrs. Blackwell. Society devours the discarded. Ethan chooses ambition, and me. Fight it, and you'll lose more than a husband. Your name, your place." The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Olivia alone with the echo of those words. She sank onto the settee, head in hands. Tears came hot and unbidden. How had their love frayed to this? Ethan, the man who once carried her over puddles on rainy walks, now bartering her for gold and glamour. Footsteps in the hall. Bridget, returning with the tea tray, her young face etched with worry. "Ma'am, shall I prepare your things? Or call the missus?" Olivia wiped her eyes, straightening. Eliza would demand propriety, a quiet divorce perhaps, but that meant exile to the countryside, whispers of failure trailing her like smoke. No, she wouldn't fade. "Fetch my cloak, Bridget, and pen and paper. I'm going out." The carriage rattled over cobblestones toward the Whittaker residence on the quieter edge of Gramercy Park. Daniel's home was modest for a man of his talent. A brownstone with ivy climbing its facade, sketches of iron bridges pinned to the parlour walls. He greeted her at the door himself, surprise lighting his brown eyes. At 32, he cut a different figure from Ethan, lean with ink-stained fingers and a mop of chestnut hair that defied combs. "Mrs. Blackwell, I didn't expect— Please, come in." Oh, the parlour was a haven of books and blueprints, sunlight filtering through tall windows onto a worn Persian rug. No ostentatious crystal here, just the honest scent of oiled wood and fresh ink. Olivia removed her bonnet, her dark curls escaping their pins. "Mr. Whittaker, Daniel, if I may, I need advice, not on parks, but on bridges, the kind that hold when everything else crumbles." He poured sherry from a decanter, his movements careful. "You've come to the right place. Bridges are my life's work. What troubles you?" She hesitated, the social cost looming. Visiting a gentleman unchaperoned could spark rumors faster than a match to dry tinder, but Clara's words burned. "My marriage, it's fracturing. My husband has entangled himself with another. She came today, bold as daylight, to stake her claim." Daniel's face darkened, not with pity but understanding. He set down his glass. "I'm sorry. Ethan Blackwell. I've crossed paths with him at investors' meetings. Ambitious man. But ambition blinds." Olivia paced, her skirts swishing. "He builds empires while I stitch for the poor. I thought our life was solid. Now it's all shifting sands." A knock interrupted, his housekeeper announcing a visitor. Daniel excused himself, returning moments later with a sealed envelope. "For you, from the bank, urgent." She broke the seal, scanning the elegant script. Her blood ran cold. "It's from Ethan's solicitor, demanding I sign over my Harrington dowry shares for expansion." But Clara mentioned mines. "This is it, the alliance." Daniel read over her shoulder, frowning. "This ties you to his debts. Refuse and he could freeze your accounts. Society would call it disloyalty." The room spun, sign, and she funded his betrayal. Refuse and isolation beckoned, cut off, shunned. Allies. Eliza would urge compliance for the family's sake. Antagonists? Clara pulling strings like a puppeteer. And Ethan. What role did he play? "I can't," Olivia said, crumpling the paper, "not without knowing the truth." Daniel placed a hand on her arm, gentle, steady. "Then seek it, but carefully. The elite play by rules that crush the unwary." As she left, the carriage bearing her home through twilight streets, Olivia felt the world tilt. No more quiet mornings, no illusions of harmony. This letter, this visit, it shattered the status quo. She had to confront Ethan, demand answers. But what if his rage from the ball paled beside the storm to come? The choice loomed, submit or fight, altering everything. The carriage jolted to a stop before the grand facade of the Waldorf Hotel, its marble steps alive with the flutter of silk and feathers. Olivia stepped down, her heart a drumbeat against her ribs. It was the afternoon tea hosted by Mrs. Astor herself, a semi-public proving ground where alliances formed and reputations teetered like tightropes. She had chosen a gown of dove-grey filet, its fitted bodice and flowing skirt modest yet elegant, a single pearl brooch at her throat, a Harrington heirloom, cool against her skin. No time to change after leaving Daniel. Confrontation with Ethan would wait. First, she needed to show her face, to weave through the whispers unscathed. Inside, the palm garden room bloomed with potted ferns and crystal chandeliers, the air thick with perfume and the murmur of elite voices. Ladies in bustled dresses clustered around low tables, laden with tiered trays of scones, cucumber sandwiches and delicate china cups steaming with bergamot tea. Olivia scanned the crowd. There, Eliza chatting with a Vanderbilt cousin, her black silk severe as ever. And Ethan, tall, commanding in his grey wool suit, deep blue tie knotted precisely, stood near the center, surrounded by bankers and industrialists, his laugh booming like a distant train. She approached a side table, nodding to acquaintances. "Mrs. Blackwell," cooed Mrs. Langford, the sewing circle gossipmonger, her rouged cheeks blooming wider. "Such a scandalous night at the ball. You and Mr. Whittaker, quite the polka, and your husband with dear Clara Voss. The tongues are wagging already." Olivia's fingers tightened on her reticule, subtle humiliation, served with cream. "Merely a dance, Mrs. Langford, as was Mr. Blackwell's waltz." She kept her tone light, but the words drew sidelong glances. Class friction simmered here. Old money like the Harringtons eyeing new titans like the Blackwells with wary envy. A young heiress nearby tittered behind her fan, her voice carrying just enough. They say she's losing her grip. Mistresses and architects, how déclassé. Heat rose in Olivia's cheeks, but she lifted her chin, accepting a cup from a white-gloved waiter. The tea scalded her tongue, a sharp reminder to stay composed. Etiquette was armor in this world, where a single misstep could exile one to the social wilderness. She moved toward a quieter cluster, where Daniel Whitaker conversed with a group of reformers, men and women advocating for tenement improvements, their faces earnest under the room's opulence. "Olivia," Daniel said softly, excusing himself to her side. His brown eyes held quiet concern, his frock coat slightly rumpled, as if he'd been sketching bridges all morning. "You came. After everything." She nodded, the pearl brooch catching the light, a symbolic weight passed from her grandmother, who had weathered her own marital storms with silent strength. "I had to," hiding invites more whispers. Their shoulders brushed as they stood, a micro-gesture of solidarity. No grand defense from him, just the steady warmth of his presence, like a beam holding up a faltering arch. From across the room, Ethan's gaze locked on them. He excused himself from his circle, striding over with purposeful steps, his broad frame cutting through the crowd like a locomotive. Clara lingered in the shadows near a fern, her emerald gown a subtle echo of Olivia's wedding hue, her green eyes watchful, a faint smile playing on her lips. The antagonist observing, her influence a web tightening. "Ethan," Olivia said, turning to face him. The air between them crackled, unspoken accusations hanging heavy. "Mrs. Blackwell?" he replied formally, though his blue eyes flickered with that possessive fire from the ball. "Enjoying the tea?" His tone was civil, but his jaw ticked, betraying the undercurrent. Daniel shifted slightly, a subtle barrier. "Mr. Blackwell, fine event. Mrs. Astor's gardens are a triumph." Ethan ignored him, focusing on Olivia. "We need to speak privately." It wasn't a request, but as he reached for her elbow, a familiar gesture now laced with tension, their eyes met. In that shared silence, something stirred. Not the rage of possession, but a flicker of the old Ethan, the one who had once traced her hand with tender fingers under starlit skies. A small emotional advance, fragile as a truce. Before she could respond, Mrs. Langford swept in, her voice a stage whisper. "Oh, the three of you, such harmony, though I hear the papers might note it tomorrow. Blackwell Triangle has a ring, doesn't it?" Laughter rippled from nearby tables, subtle barbs wrapped in silk. Humiliation landed, light but stinging, class whispers turning personal. Ethan's hand dropped, his face hardening. Clara, from her vantage, raised her cup in mock toast, her gaze predatory. Olivia pulled back, the brooch suddenly heavy, a talisman against the fray. "Not now, Ethan. Not here." She turned to Daniel, her voice low. "Thank you for listening earlier." He nodded, his hand brushing hers briefly in farewell, a touch like a promise, innocent yet charged. "Strength in the structure, Olivia. It holds." As Ethan watched her glide away, joining Eliza with forced poise, the room's chatter swelled, but the damage was done. By evening, as Olivia returned home to the brownstone's lamplit quiet, a newsboy's cry pierced the dusk. "Extra! Society notes from the Waldorf! Scandal in the Palms!" She snatched the evening edition from Bridget, her heart sinking. There, in the gossip column, Mrs. O. Blackwell, seen in lively discourse with architect D. Whitaker, while husband E. Blackwell attends to business matters. Whispers of shifting alliances amid tea and tango. The words burned, visible consequence, splashed for all Manhattan to devour. Ethan burst into the parlor moments later, the paper crumpled in his fist, rage etching lines on his face. "What game are you playing, Olivia? It's ruinous. She met his stare, the brooch glinting defiantly. "The game you started." But as his eyes softened, just a fraction, pleading now, doubt crept in. Would this spark reconciliation or fuel the fire? The night deepened, and with it, the shadows of what came next. Rain lashed the carriage windows like 1,000 accusing fingers, turning the road from the brownstone into a blurred ribbon of mud and shadow. Olivia huddled beneath her woolen cloak, the fabric damp and heavy against her shoulders. It had started as a drizzle after the evening edition's sting, but by the time Ethan insisted they leave for his upstate estate, claiming urgent business with a rail inspector, the sky had unleashed a tempest worthy of the gods' wrath. No time for packing beyond essentials, the driver cracked his whip, and they rattled northward through the storm, the horses' hooves churning the earth. Ethan sat across from her, his broad frame filling the space. Coat unbuttoned to reveal the crisp lines of his shirt. The lantern swayed, casting flickering gold on his face, harsh angles softened by fatigue. He hadn't spoken since they departed, his blue eyes fixed on the chaos outside, jaw set like iron. Olivia clutched her reticule, the crumpled newspaper inside a silent witness. The Blackwell Triangle headline mocked her from memory. But worse was the undercurrent. Clara's shadow woven into every glance, every pause. Thunder boomed, jolting the carriage. Olivia gasped, her hand flying to the seat. Ethan reached out instinctively, his fingers closing over hers. Warm, calloused from years gripping ledges and rails. She froze, the touch a spark in the dimness. It had been months since such contact, innocent or otherwise. Slowly, she didn't pull away. "Forgive the haste," he said finally, voice low over the roar. "The inspectors waiting at the estate. Can't trust telegrams in this weather. They'd be drowned before reaching Chicago." She nodded, studying the veins on his hand, the faint scar from a boyhood accident he'd once described during their courtship. A fall from a hayloft, chasing dreams of building something grand. And the storm. Fate's way of trapping us, I suppose. A ghost of a smile tugged his lips. Fate or folly. Mine, mostly. He released her hand, but didn't retreat, the space between them shrinking with each rut in the road. The carriage lurched again, harder this time, and Olivia slid toward him. His arm came around her shoulders, steadying, protective. No words, just the shared warmth against the chill seeping through the cracks. Hours blurred into night, the storm unrelenting. They stopped once at a roadside inn, but the landlord shook his head. Rooms flooded, roads impassable. "Press on, sir. The Blackwell lands are but 5 miles. Back inside, the rocking lulled Olivia into a doze, her head resting against Ethan's shoulder. She woke to his even breathing, his chin brushing her hair. For a moment it felt like their early days, stolen weekends at a rented cottage, no empires, just whispers and firelight. The estate loomed at last, a sprawling manor of stone and timber, lanterns glowing like beacons through the downpour. Servants rushed out with umbrellas, but the wind snatched them away. Ethan scooped Olivia into his arms, carrying her over the threshold as rain soaked his back. She laughed, startled, the sound light and unexpected, a touch of humor in the gale. "Like our wedding night," she murmured, clinging to his neck. He set her down in the foyer, water pooling at their feet. "Was it?" His eyes searched hers, vulnerable in the lamplight. The housekeeper bustled forward with towels and dry clothes, but Ethan waved her off. "Leave us. We'll manage." Upstairs, in the master suite, a room of heavy oak and velvet drapes, they changed by the roaring fire. Olivia slipped into a borrowed nightgown of soft flannel, her dark hair loose and drying in waves. Ethan, in shirt sleeves, poured brandy from a crystal decanter, the amber liquid catching the flames. He handed her a glass, their fingers brushing again. "To bridges," he said, echoing Daniel's words unwittingly. "The ones we build." or burn. She sipped, the burn steadying her. They settled on the window seat, watching lightning fork the sky. Silence stretched, comfortable now, broken only by the fire's crackle. Olivia traced the rim of her glass. Clara came to the house today. She spoke of promises, necklaces, mines. Ethan stiffened, setting his drink aside. His face, illuminated by the hearth, revealed cracks, guilt etching lines around his eyes. Damn her, it's not what you think. He paused, rubbing his temple. The mines, they're a gamble. Her husband's debts nearly ruined her. I invested to help, not for that. Olivia turned to him, searching. Then why the secrecy? The dances, the rage when I waltzed with Daniel? He met her gaze, raw. Rage. Jealousy, Olivia, seeing you in his arms. It woke something. I've been blind, chasing rails and deals, forgetting the woman who gave me her trust. His voice cracked. My father died in a rail crash when I was 15, broke, chasing the American dream. I swore I'd build security for us, but it consumed me. Clara. She was a distraction, a way to feel alive amid the ledgers. Guilt's eaten me since. Tears welled in her eyes. She reached for an object on the mantel, a silver locket inherited from her grandmother, its chain fine as spider silk. Inside, a miniature portrait of her parents, young and laughing. This was Mother's. She endured father's infidelities, stayed for duty, but I want more. Love, not just legacy. Ethan took the locket gently, his thumb brushing the engraving. I remember your stories, the quiet strength. He closed it, pressing it back into her palm, his hand lingering. A gesture, simple, a tacit promise in the firelight. The air warmed, emotional currents shifting from frost to thaw. Trust flickered, fragile but real, humanizing him. Not the titan, but the man scarred by loss, duty's heavy yoke. They talked then, voices weaving through the storm, her fears of fading into society's whispers, his regrets over late nights that stole their mornings. Laughter slipped in, soft, her teasing his boyish scar, him recalling her disastrous first attempt at embroidery. Threads tangling like their lives. No consummation, just proximity, layers peeling in the confidences. Dawn crept in, the rain easing to a patter. As Ethan rose to summon breakfast, a knock echoed. Urgent, from the butler. Sir, a messenger from the city. Telegram for Mrs. Blackwell. Olivia's stomach knotted. Ethan handed it over, his face paling as she read aloud. Urgent. Society columns tomorrow. Voss claims Blackwell alliance. Dowry papers filed. Confront or lose all. Ally. Clara's move, a signal through the wires, espionage in ink. The intimacy shattered, the emotional tide ebbing fast. Ethan's eyes hardened. She's striking now. Olivia crumpled the paper, the locket heavy in her fist. What fresh wound would this bring? The storm outside had passed, but the one within raged on. The telegram's ink seemed to bleed under Olivia's gaze, each word a dagger twisting deeper. She stood in the estate's foyer, the morning light filtering through rain-streaked windows, turning the polished oak floors to a somber gleam. Ethan paced behind her, his shirt sleeves rolled up, exposing forearms corded from years of labor before the ledgers took over. The storm had fled, leaving a dripping world outside. Trees bowed like weary courtiers, the Hudson River swollen and grey in the distance. But inside, the tempest brewed anew. Clara! Ethan growled, snatching the paper from her hand. His blue eyes scanned it again, fury etching fresh lines on his brow. She's twisting the knife. That ally. Who sent this? One of my clerks, no doubt. He bought off, or scared. Olivia clutched the locket, its silver cool against her palm, a fragile anchor amid the unravelling. The knight's confessions lingered like smoke, his vulnerability, her tentative trust. But this missive shattered it. Confront or lose all, she read aloud once more, her voice a whisper. The dowry papers, her Harrington inheritance, The last tether to her family's fading legacy, now fodder for Clara's ambitions. She's not just claiming you, she's claiming me. The butler hovered, his face impassive, but his eyes darted, loyalty tested in the Blackwell household. Ethan crumpled the telegram, tossing it into the fire that still smouldered in the grate. We'll return to the city at once. Face this head on. I won't let her... A thunderous knock at the door cut him short. Servants scattered as a liveried messenger burst in, soaked from the roads, bearing a leather satchel stamped with a law firm seal. For Mr. Ethan Blackwell, urgent delivery from Voss and Associates. Ethan's face drained of colour. He took the satchel, hands steady despite the tremor Olivia saw in his jaw. Inside, documents, thick and ominous, bound with red ribbon. He flipped through them by the hall table, the parlour clock ticking like a heartbeat. Petition for alliance, he muttered. Clara's filing for recognition. Claims I promised marriage after her widowhood. And these... He thrust a page at Olivia. Your dowry shares transferred to a joint venture. Mine's in Pennsylvania. She's entangled it all, publicly. Olivia's knees weakened. She sank onto a nearby chair, the velvet upholstery swallowing her like quicksand. Publicly. Not a private threat, but a frontal assault, splashed across legal notices that would reach every drawing room by noon. Society's vultures would feast. The faithful wife cuckolded, her fortune siphoned for a mistress's rise. Eliza would be mortified. The Harrington name dragged through ink and whispers, and Daniel, his quiet support, now tainted by association. "Why now?" she demanded, rising to face him. "After last night? Was it all a ploy, Ethan? To soften me before the strike?" He recoiled as if slapped, his broad shoulders slumping. "No, God, no. Clara's desperate. Her husband's debts are a noose. Creditors circling like wolves. She cornered me months ago, begged for investment. I agreed, foolishly, without strings. But this... sabotage. She's forging my intent, turning aid into entanglement." The messenger cleared his throat. "Sir, there's more. A note from Mrs. Voss herself." He handed over a sealed envelope, perfumed with jasmine. Ethan broke it open, reading silently. His expression darkened to thunder. "She demands I endorse the petition today, or she releases letters, mine compromising, boardroom secrets, bribes to senators for rail rights. It would ruin me. Us. Chantageum." The word hung unspoken, but its weight crushed the air. Olivia paced the foyer, her flannel nightgown traded for a hasty travelling dress of navy wool, its high collar chafing like accusation. The estate, once a refuge, now felt like a trap, isolated miles from allies, the telephone lines non-existent in this rural sprawl. No quick wire to Eliza, no hurried counsel from Daniel, just them and the unravelling. "We fight it," she said, stopping before him. Her dark eyes met his, searching for the man from the firelit confessions. Together, expose her forgeries. Ethan shook his head, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "It's public now. The petition hits the courts by afternoon. Reporters will swarm. New York Herald, Times. My partners will pull out, fearing scandal. Your reputation." He trailed off, guilt flashing. "You'll be isolated, shunned at every tea, every gala. The Harringtons can't weather this." The consequence landed tangible. Loss of support. He turned away, staring out at the sodden lawns. "I have to go alone. Meet her solicitor, contain the damage. You stay here, safe." "Alone?" Olivia's voice rose, cracking. "After everything? This separates us, Ethan. Pushes me aside like yesterday's news." He faced her, eyes tormented. "It's the only way. If we appear divided, she wins. Trust me, one last time." The moment stretched. "Irrevocable," she nodded, But inside, trust fractured like thin ice. As he donned his coat, barking orders to the driver, Olivia retreated to the parlour, the locket slipping from her fingers to the rug. A point of no return, his solitary charge into the fray, leaving her in exile, emotional if not literal. The carriage wheels crunched gravel, fading into the mist. Hours ticked by in silence, broken only by the butler's discreet trays of tea. Olivia wandered the estate's library, shelves groaning with leather-bound tomes on commerce and conquest. Ethan's world, not hers. Isolation seeped in, a valley of despair. No letters arrived, no allies. By dusk, a second messenger pounded the door. Another telegram, this from Eliza. Scandal breaks. Voss claims all. Return or be disowned. Protect the name. Olivia crumpled it, tears blurring the script. Ethan's choice, to face Clara without her, broke the fragile bridge they'd mended in the storm. Ultimatum loomed, yield to propriety or fight from the shadows. But as night fell, a distant rumble echoed. Not thunder, but hooves. Riders approaching, torches flickering, Clara's men, or worse. The estate's doors rattled, and Olivia's heart seized. What betrayal had Ethan unleashed? The riders' hooves thundered closer, a frantic rhythm that shattered the estate's uneasy hush. Olivia pressed against the parlour window, her breath fogging the glass, heart pounding like a war drum. Torches bobbed in the gloom, casting wild shadows on the rain-slicked drive. Not Clara's men. No, these were locals, faces she dimly recognized from estate staff. The foreman had clutched in calloused hands, and a pair of rail workers, their oilskins dripping. Behind them, a horse reared, its rider dismounting with urgent grace. Daniel Whitaker, his coat mud-spattered, brown hair plastered to his forehead. "Olivia!" he called, voice cutting through the night as the butler flung open the doors. She rushed forward, the locket forgotten on the rug, her travelling dress sodden at the hems. "Daniel, what brings you here? The roads are a quagmire." He stepped inside, shaking off water like a faithful hound, his eyes scanning her face with quiet intensity. "Your mother, Mrs. Harrington, sent word through a rider from the nearest telegraph office. The scandal's exploding in the city. Clara's petition hit the courts at midday. Forged signatures, claims of a secret engagement. But there's more." He pulled a damp envelope from his inner pocket, sealed with plain wax. "Eliza intercepted this. From a clerk in my firm, loyal to no one but truth. Read it." Olivia's fingers trembled as she broke the seal, unfolding the single sheet under the foyer lamp's glow. The script was hurried, ink smudged. Mrs. Blackwell, Voss forges alliances. Ledger from her late husband's mines shows debts manipulated. Blackwell invested to save her, not seduce. But she's twisting it. Blackmail letters planted, dowry ploy to force his hand. Proof in estate safe. Old Voss diary exposes her schemes against prior suitors. Burn after. J.M. Her breath caught. Structural truth unfurled like a map. Clara's web of manipulation, debts not just financial but vengeful, a plot to ensnare Ethan through guilt and greed. Not cold ambition from him, but duty, rescuing a widow from ruin, twisted into scandal by her grasp. "The safe," Olivia murmured, mind racing, "in the study, Ethan's private one." She led Daniel there, the room a fortress of oak panels and locked cabinets. Smelling of leather and aged paper, the combination, her wedding date a bitter irony, clicked open. Inside, amid stock certificates and rail plats, lay a slim volume, Clara Voss's diary, bound in faded Morocco, its pages yellowed. She flipped through, Daniel's lantern light steady over her shoulder. Entries leaped out. Husband's death a mercy, debts crushing. Blackwell's investment my salvation, but he'll pay more. Forge the letters, claim the heart. Harrington dowry seals it, ruin her, claim him. Testimonies scrawled in margins, bribes to clerks, a portrait tucked between pages. Clara, with her late husband, eyes cold even then. And ledgers, Ethan's clean infusions marked as loans, her alterations bloating them into promises. Peak of hope surged. Ethan reframed, not the betrayer, but the burdened protector, his distance born of shame over entanglements he couldn't escape. "He tried to shield me," Olivia whispered, closing the diary. "Guilt, not indifference." Daniel nodded, his hand light on her arm, a bridge of support. "Now you act. Publicly. A letter to the Times exposing this. Shift the tide." But Valley descended swift. Hoofbeats again. This time the carriage returning. Ethan burst in, face gaunt, mud caking his boots. "Olivia, the courts dismissed the petition. Her solicitor backed down when I threatened countersuit, but the damage—" He froze, seeing Daniel, the diary in her hands. She stepped forward, voice firm. "I know, Ethan, all of it." She thrust the volume at him, recounting the revelations, the diary's proofs, the clerk's warning. His eyes widened, then softened, the weight lifting like fog. "You believed me after everything." "Believed the truth," she corrected, though trust bloomed warmer now, a contained reapproximation. His hand finding hers, not in passion's fire, but steady alliance. They stood together, shoulders touching, the first big success. Unity forged in revelation. Laughter edged in. Wry. Ethan's chuckle at Clara's clumsy forgeries, Olivia teasing his heroic blunders. Yet threat loomed greater. A pounding at the door. The butler admitted a breathless boy, newsboy from the city, clutching a broadsheet. "Extra! Voss strikes back, accuses Blackwell of coercion, calls for assembly vote on rail ethics tomorrow night at the Union League Club." Indignation peaked against Clara, the widow's venom exposed, her schemes a public poison preying on the vulnerable. Olivia's agency ignited. "We go, I speak, for us, for the truth." She penned the letter then, by lamplight. A bold missive to the editor, diary excerpts enclosed, proclaiming Ethan's innocence, her resolve. Mailed at dawn, it would alter perceptions, from scorned wife to avenging force. Ethan pulled her close, forehead to hers, together. Hope crested, but Clara's shadow lengthened, the assembly a gauntlet, her final ploy brewing. As riders departed into the paling sky, a summons arrived, invitation to the club sealed with society's wary hand. The confrontation awaited, public and unforgiving. The gas lamps of the Union League Club flickered like watchful eyes along Fifth Avenue, casting long shadows on the granite steps where carriages disgorged Manhattan's elite. It was the evening of 1887's most anticipated assembly, a raucous gathering of tycoons, senators, and society matrons, ostensibly to debate rail ethics, but laced with the undercurrents of personal vendettas. Olivia Blackwell descended from her brougham, her hand firm on Ethan's arm, her gown of midnight blue velvet whispering against the stone. The bodice, fitted with subtle jet beading, hugged her frame like armor, its high collar a shield against the night's chill, and the stares that awaited. Inside, the grand hall thrummed with cigar smoke and murmured alliances, crystal decanters clinking amid leather armchairs and polished oak panels. Portraits of founding fathers loomed overhead, stern judges in the fray. Ethan, resplendent in black tailcoat and white tie, his broad shoulders squared, guided her through the throng. His blue eyes held a steely resolve, the revelations from the estate diary fueling their united front. No more fractures. Tonight they stood as one. "Steady," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "Clara's here. I see her, by the podium." Olivia nodded, her dark curls pinned with pearl combs, the locket from her grandmother tucked beneath her bodice like a secret talisman. Daniel Whitaker waited near the side entrance, his lean form in an understated grey suit, a satchel of blueprints at his feet, cover for the proofs they'd smuggled in. Eliza Harrington lingered in the women's alcove, her silver-streaked hair impeccable, black silk gown a banner of old-world dignity. Allies aligned, but the air crackled with peril. The assembly convened under crystal chandeliers. The chairman, a portly banker with mutton chops, banging a gavel for order. We gather to scrutinize the rail's moral compass, investments, ethics, the human cost. Murmurs rose, but eyes darted to the center. Clara Voss, perched on a velvet settee like a queen in exile, her scarlet gown a defiant blaze amid the neutrals. At her side, a sallow-faced solicitor clutched a dossier, his fingers twitching. She rose first, voice honeyed venom slicing the hush. Gentlemen and ladies, I bring evidence of corruption. Ethan Blackwell, hailed as a visionary, coerced investments from vulnerable widows, myself included. Gasps rippled. She unfurled the dossier, pages fluttering like poisoned confetti. Letters in his hand, promising alliance, forged? No, witnessed by my trusted clerk. Underdubbed, a bought man stepped forward, spectacles glinting, swearing to the script's authenticity. Mr. Blackwell sought my mistress's minds for personal gain, binding her fate to his. The hall erupted. Whispers turned to jeers. Rail robber. Scandal on tracks. Olivia felt the tide crash, reputations teetering, Ethan's empire a breath from derailment. Clara's eyes locked on her, triumphant. The final sabotage, a public guillotine. Society's gaze shifted, from humiliated wife to discarded fool. Ethan's jaw clenched, but Olivia squeezed his arm. Signal given. She stepped forward, voice clear as a bell over the din. Mr. Chairman, if I may. Heads turned, surprise etching brows. Women like her spoke in parlors, not podiums, but the diary's truths burned in her chest. Mrs. Voss speaks of coercion. I speak of deceit. Clara laughed sharp. And you, Mrs. Blackwell, the cuckolded shadow, spare us the melodrama. Olivia ignored the barb, gesturing to Daniel. He approached, satchel open, revealing the Morocco-bound diary and ledgers, yellowed pages, Clara's own scrawl damning her. This is Mrs. Voss's hand, Olivia declared, holding it aloft. Gasps swelled anew. She read excerpts, voice steady, debts manipulated, forgeries plotted, suitors ensnared before Ethan's name appeared. Not investment, blackmail. Her clerk, bought, as this witness attests. A reformed Voss servant, trembling but resolute, corroborated from the wings. She twisted the letters, ma'am, for the Harrington dowry to ruin you both. The hall froze, then ignited. Questions barraged Clara, her porcelain facade cracking. Lies! She shrieked, but the solicitor paled, dossier wilting in his grip. Ethan rose then, his deep voice commanding silence. I aided a widow in need, no more. These proofs stand, let the courts verify. He met Olivia's eyes, a nod of profound respect, their moral choice etched clear. Truth over empire, unity over isolation. The chairman called for vote. Ethics upheld, Voss's claims dismissed amid jeers. Community reframed in waves. Matrons who once whispered now nodded approval. Bankers clapped Ethan's back. Eliza's proud gaze a balm. Clara fled the hall, scarlet skirts trailing like blood, her empire of lies publicly shattered, exiled to whispers and debtors' shadows. Triumph surged, a euphoric wave validating every tear, every doubt. The couple vindicated, their bond forged unbreakable before the glittering elite. The assembly dissolved into toasts, the air lighter, chandeliers seeming to shine brighter. Olivia and Ethan slipped to a quiet alcove, his hand finding hers in the dimness, a tacit commitment, fingers interlacing with quiet promise, no words needed. The silence after the storm spoke of futures reclaimed, love resilient amid the Gilded Age's gales. If this victory has your heart racing, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss another thrilling tale from this era of ambition and passion. But as confetti of spent programs littered the floor, a final envelope arrived, sealed, urgent, from an anonymous hand. Ethan's brow furrowed. What lingering shadow dared intrude on their peace? The envelope's wax seal cracked under Ethan's thumb like fragile bone, the paper inside crisp and unyielding in the alcove's dim glow. Olivia leaned close, her velvet sleeve brushing his arm, the scent of her rosewater mingling with the club's lingering cigar haze. Around them, the assembly's echoes faded, clinking glasses, hearty laughs, as victors toasted the night's justice. But here, in this shadowed corner, tension coiled anew. "It's from the courts," Ethan read aloud, his voice a low rumble. "Dismissal of Voss's petition, full retraction required by Dawn, or perjury charges. Her solicitors fled to Boston, debts called in." He exhaled, shoulders easing, the weight of weeks sloughing off like mud from boots. Clara's empire crumbled, exiled to a dingy boarding house upstate, her salons shuttered. Prestige evaporated like morning mist. No more scarlet gowns or whispered alliances, just creditors and scorn, her name a cautionary hiss in drawing rooms. Olivia's hand tightened on his. "It's over, truly." He folded the paper, tucking it away. "Thanks to you. Your voice tonight, it changed everything." His blue eyes held hers, no longer stormy with possession, but clear with admiration. The transformation shone, her once quiet demeanor now laced with steel, compassion fueling leadership. She had spoken not from shadows, but center stage, rallying the elite to truth. Ethan, too, stood altered, his broad frame less a fortress, more a partner, ambition tempered by the humility of near loss. They slipped from the club into the crisp night, the brougham waiting like a faithful steed. Eliza awaited at the brownstone, her silver hair aglow under gaslight, black silk exchanged for a shawl of soft cashmere. "My daughter," she said, embracing Olivia tightly, tears glinting, "you've honored us all." The Harrington name, once fraying, now wove stronger, repositioned among the old guard, whispers turning to nods of respect. Daniel joined them briefly in the parlour, his satchel lighter, blueprints rolled under his arm. "The proof served well," he said, brown eyes warm. "And your park design?" "The committees approved it. Green spaces for the tenements, funded by rail philanthropists moved by tonight's ethics vote." A reward. His career ascended, from quiet sketches to city shaper, their alliance a bridge enduring. By morning the city stirred with fresh broadsheets, Blackwell vindication, widow's web unraveled. Society reframed them, Olivia from scorned wife to resilient force, Ethan from suspected rogue to ethical titan. Legal threads knotted tight, Clara's forgeries exposed, her dowry ploy voided, Olivia's shares restored intact. No prisons, no accusations for the couple, just justice served cold. Her fall a self-made grave. In the brownstone's sunlit study, once Ethan's solitary domain of ledgers and maps, they gathered. Servants polished silver, but the air hummed with renewal. Olivia crossed to the window, overlooking Fifth Avenue's bustle, carriages clattering, newsboys triumphant. "We've survived the gales," she said softly. "Now, we build." Ethan nodded, drawing a small velvet box from his pocket. No heirloom burdened by history, just a simple gold band, etched with interlocking rails and vines, forged fresh in a jeweler's quiet fire. "By choice," he murmured, slipping it onto her finger beside her wedding ring. "Equals, no empires without heart." Their bond sealed, free and fervent. A ritual born of firelight confessions and storm-tossed roads. She smiled, tracing the engraving. A legacy, then, not just rails, but reaches, for the forgotten. They pledged it there, funds from the mine sales to erect a free library in the tenements, shelves stocked with tales of resilience open to immigrants and laborers alike. Ethan would lead the board, his voice now advocating fair wages alongside profits. Olivia, her compassion blooming, envisioned reading circles for women, voices like hers amplified, transformation etched deep, his leadership compassionate, her poise commanding. Eliza beamed from the doorway, her perpetual severity softened. The Harrington spirit endures. Side fates settled, Bridget promoted to housekeeper, her Irish lilt a household melody. Mrs. Langford, the gossip, recanted in a tea-time apology, repositioned as a neutral ally in reform circles. Afternoon waned into gold, the couple strolling Central Park, paths they once wandered in courtship, now reclaimed. Leaves rustled underfoot, the reservoir mirroring a sky unmarred by storms. Ethan paused by a budding oak, pulling Olivia close. Their lips met, not in possession's rage, but love's quiet fire. A kiss sealing vows renewed. She leaned into him, dark curls catching the breeze, his arms steady around her waist. In the distance, the skyline rose, spires and smokestacks, the Gilded Age's pulse steady. Their legacy stirred already, masons breaking ground for the library, a plaque to read, built on truth and union. Children would learn there, dreams bridging divides, much like the pair who now walked hand in hand. Yet, as dusk painted the horizon crimson, a carriage approached from the avenue, a messenger on horseback, bearing a sealed missive. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly. From Chicago, rail expansion. Or perhaps more. Olivia squeezed his hand, eyes sparkling with shared horizon. What new chapter beckoned in this endless American forge? 10 years had woven their quiet tapestry over the Blackwell estate upstate, transforming the once storm-lashed manor into a haven of enduring light. It was 1897 now, the Gilded Age's frenzy softened by time's gentle hand, though the railroads still hummed like veins across the land. Olivia Blackwell, 34, her raven hair threaded with subtle silver, her figure graced by motherhood, stood on the wide veranda, watching the Hudson roll lazy and gold under the autumn sun. Her gown of soft sage wool, high-necked and flowing, caught the breeze, a far cry from the corseted battles of her youth, no more the fragile debutante. She moved with the assured poise of a woman who had stared down tempests and emerged whole. Ethan joined her, his step still strong at 40, though lines of wisdom etched his broad face, softening the granite jaw that once fueled empires. His vest of charcoal tweed hung open over a crisp shirt, no tie to bind him, the informality of a life reclaimed. He carried their youngest, little Eliza, named for her grandmother, on his hip, the child 3 years old with her mother's dark curls and father's blue eyes, giggled as she tugged his ear. "Papa, tell the river story again." He chuckled, deep and warm, settling beside Olivia on the wicker settee. Their hands intertwined naturally, fingers calloused from shared labours, his from rails turned philanthropic, hers from pages turned in quiet advocacy. Later, Sprite, Mama and I have our own tales to remember. Eliza scampered off to chase fireflies, early risen in the fading light, leaving them in companionable silence, the kind forged in fire and forgiveness. The love had endured, not as the whirlwind of their courtship, but as a steady flame kindled anew each dawn. They had renewed vows in a simple ceremony 5 years past, under the same oak in Central Park where Ethan once proposed. No grand cathedral, but a circle of family and true allies. Children blessed their union. Young Harrington, 7, with a mop of chestnut hair and a penchant for sketching bridges like Uncle Daniel. And Grace, 5, whose laughter echoed the bells of St. Patrick's. Fatherhood had humanized Ethan further, his ambitions channeled into fair wages for rail workers, hospitals for the injured, legacies that honored the dreams he once chased alone. Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder, nostalgia swelling like the river's tide. Do you ever think of that night at the Union League, the chandeliers, the gasps? Clara's face when the diary fell open. She smiled faintly, the memory bittersweet. Ethan's arm tightened around her. Every assembly since, you, stepping forward, my fierce Olivia, it saved us. They had built on that victory. The library in the tenements, born of mine sale proceeds, now stood as a beacon. Red brick and arched windows, shelves groaning with volumes on history, poetry, and reform. Olivia led reading circles there weekly, women from Ellis Island shores finding voices in English and their native tongues, dreams bridging old worlds to new. Ethan's railroad sponsored scholarships, boys like his younger self rising from clerks to engineers. Society had reframed them long ago, the Blackwells, paragons of resilient union, their brownstone on Fifth Avenue a hub for ethical galas, no longer shadowed by scandal. Eliza Harrington, now 60, resided with them often, her silver chignon looser, her black bombazines traded for lavender silks. Widowhood's severity had mellowed into pride. She doted on her grandchildren, recounting Harrington tales by the hearth. "You honored the name, child," she'd say to Olivia, eyes misty. Daniel Whitaker, married now to a quiet schoolteacher, had risen to city architect laureate, his parks greening the slums, green lungs amid smokestacks. Their friendship endured, a bridge unyielding, visits marked by shared sketches and laughter over old waltzes, but not all paid light prices. Clara Voss lingered in memory's dim corners, a cautionary spectre. Exiled after the assembly, her forgeries unraveled in quiet courtrooms. No spectacle, just the grind of justice. Debt swallowed her remnants. She faded to a boarding house in Philadelphia, then whispers of a seamstress's life in Baltimore, stitching gowns for those who once envied her scarlet. No more salons or suitors, isolation her cage, pride's bitter wage. Olivia had heard through Eliza's networks, Clara, gaunt and greying, penning anonymous letters to papers, railing against ungrateful titans, a price steep, self-wrought, evoking pity more than triumph. The sun dipped, painting the veranda in amber. Harrington and Grace bounded from the garden, faces smudged with earth from their exploration, as they called it, digging for treasures amid the flower beds. Ethan rose, scooping Grace up, while Olivia gathered Eliza. "Supper waits," he said, his voice rich with contentment. Inside, the manor glowed, crystal not for show, but family toasts, portraits added, their wedding renewed, the children's baptisms. As they gathered at the oak table, laden with roast pheasant and autumn harvest, Olivia's gaze met Ethan's across the candles. 10 years, and the spark remained, not rage's fire, but love's enduring warmth. The Gilded Age had tested them, forged them into something rarer, partners in legacy, hearts intertwined beyond ambition's grasp. Laughter filled the room, grandchildren's voices mingling with elders, a symphony of survival and joy. Outside, the Hudson whispered on, carrying echoes of storms past into the endless night. Olivia squeezed Ethan's hand under the table, a silent vow renewed. In this life they built, every dawn promised more, not perfection but presence, profound and unbroken. The river flowed, and so did they, into horizons shared. As the river's murmur faded into the velvet hush of evening, Olivia and Ethan lingered at the table, the children's laughter echoing like a benediction through the warmly lit rooms. 10 years had not dimmed the fire between them. If anything, it had deepened, rooted in the soil of trials overcome. The Gilded Age, with its glittering facades and hidden thorns, had taught them that true fortune lay not in rails or riches, but in the unyielding choice to stand together against the tempests. Olivia traced the gold band on her finger, its vines and tracks a symbol of bridges built, not just across lands, but across hearts scarred by doubt and betrayal. In those early days of scandal, when Clara's web threatened to ensnare them all, Olivia had learned the power of voice in a world that silenced women with whispers and expectations. She had stepped from the shadows of propriety into the harsh light of confrontation. Her words at the Union League, not just a defense, but a declaration of self. Ethan, once blinded by ambition's glare, discovered that empire without empathy was hollow, a lesson etched in the quiet hours of confession during that fateful storm. Their union, tested by jealousy and deceit, emerged stronger, a testament to forgiveness earned through truth. And Clara? Her downfall reminded them, and all who heard the tale, that schemes built on manipulation crumble under scrutiny, leaving only the echo of lost integrity. What endures from such stories is the spark of resilience, the courage to question, to reveal, to rebuild. In an era where fortunes rose and fell like tides, Olivia and Ethan's journey whispers that love, when chosen freely, defies even the mightiest gales. It calls us to examine our own lives. Where do we cling to illusions of security? And when do we summon the strength to dance through the fire, reclaiming what is ours? If this tale of passion, betrayal, and triumphant reunion has stirred your soul, share your thoughts in the comments below. What moment resonated most with you? The storm-tossed confessions, the assembly's dramatic unveiling, or the quiet joys of their legacy? Let me know. And to prove you've journeyed to the very end, drop the word horizon in your reply. It'll help spread this story to fellow dreamers and keep the channel's flames burning bright. For more epic narratives from America's gilded past, check the cards above. Tales of ambition, heartache, and hard-won happiness await. Until the next chapter unfolds, remember, in every shadow lies the promise of dawn. Thank you for sharing this adventure.